Привет, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Chef Liz Stevenson, and today, for all of the viewers of Tatiana's My Handbook, I'm going to teach you all about how to taste chocolate like a pro. So today I have 4 samples that I'm going to go through, and if you'd like to join in and taste samples yourself so that you can learn, I recommend that you get a really good quality dark chocolate. I have this one from Valrhona. Valrhona is a fantastic company, and they do a lot of bean to bar sourcing and put a lot of research and development into the plants that they grow, the cacao plants that they grow, so I choose them a lot. This is Lindt, also a very good quality commercial chocolate, also 70%, and we're going to talk about the differences between these two. This is not single origin, and neither is this, but it's a blend of beans from a very specific region, and it's an exceptional high quality. Then I have 66%, also Valrhona, and a 64%. This one is also, like the 70%, is a blend of regional beans, and this is a single origin from Madagascar. So when you're doing a chocolate tasting, you don't necessarily have to do it this way, but if you did, you would want to limit your samples to 4, 5, or 6. And the reason is because, like wine, if you're doing a wine tasting or even coffee, your palate can get really overwhelmed. So I have water here so I can refresh my palate and rinse it. I've organized my chocolates by cocoa percentage. If you saw my last segment, you will know that a cocoa percentage is the amount of cocoa solids contained in a chocolate bar or chocolate cocoa product. But sometimes the percentage is a little less. Like these are both really high quality. This one is a little lower because the cocoa itself is so intense that to make a chocolate with that cocoa, you need to lower the percentage so that it's not overwhelming your palate with bitterness or acidity. Right, the way to order your samples is by highest percentage to lowest. I have all dark. These are all very good quality, no nasties, no dairy, and limited sugar. So 70, 70, 66, and 64. What we want to do is first snap the chocolate. This is going to tell us if the texture is where it needs to be. A good quality chocolate should have a really high gloss. That means that it was tempered correctly, and when you break it, it should just snap like this. This one's good. Let's see, the Lindt, also great, and you can hear it snap. It shouldn't crumble, it shouldn't melt, and it shouldn't have a white powdery appearance. If that is the case, it means that it's melted and then solidified again. The quality is still okay, it'll still taste nice, but it won't feel so nice on your tongue. Right, so this one is our 70% Guanaja from Valrhona. It smells beautiful. This one also smells nice, but I get a few more aromas from this one. This is a little bit more floral, and this one is a little bit more one-dimensional. So these are 2 things you can do before you even start to eat your chocolate. Snap it and sniff it. To taste your chocolate, you're going to put a little bit in your mouth, chew it a couple of times, and then let it melt on your tongue. Your whole mouth is going to perceive the flavor. Now this one is very bitter, very dark, and there's a lot going on. So like wine or like coffee, or when you're tasting anything, really paying attention to what your mouth is telling you, you can pick up on lots of different flavor notes. What you should be aware of is that your tongue cannot pick up aroma. Your nose does that. So when you're eating chocolate, your tongue is telling you whether it's sweet or sour or bitter or even salty. So my whole palate has been, I would say, activated by this chocolate. It's really bright. It's got a lot of acidity, and many people don't know that chocolate can do that to your mouth because we're so accustomed to eating commercial, poor quality or sweetened milk chocolate where you don't get that same feeling in your mouth. Now this one I'm going to try. Very different. This one is a lot sweeter somehow, which makes me believe that even though they're the same percentage, this one is a much more powerful bean, and the way that it's roasted and processed is releasing a lot of different other flavor notes, whereas this one is a little bit more one-dimensional. Still delicious, still super tasty, but very different. There's something else I want to talk to you about before we move on to the other two, which can account for the differences in flavor, and that is going to come from the different types of cocoa trees. There are three main cocoa tree types. One is Forastero. This is mainly planted in West Africa. The other one, Criollo, mainly planted in the Caribbean, and Trinitario, native to Trinidad, which is pretty widely planted in cocoa growing regions. Cocoa growing regions are always going to be equatorial with very specific growing conditions, including a certain amount of rainfall, sunlight. Cocoa trees are very difficult to grow. So Forastero is the most widely used cocoa in commercial chocolate. The other reason, besides the high yield, is because it has a really strong, punchy flavor with very few secondary flavor notes. So when we think of the chocolate or cocoa flavor, we're really getting this from the Forastero bean. So that's why I believe this is made from Forastero beans. It's very chocolatey, it tastes like chocolate, it tastes good. But I'm not getting many other flavors from that, and it's also not a single origin, so I don't know where the beans have come from. So that indicates to me that it is a blend. So tastes good, but not a whole lot going on. Now this one, I'm not sure the beans used, but it could be very well from Criollo or Trinitario. The Criollo beans are the finest quality beans. They are known as the diva of all cocoa trees because they are the hardest to grow, the lowest yield, and they produce the most secondary flavors. So the highest quality chocolate in the world will definitely use some Criollo beans. And the Trinitario is a nice combination of the two. Different flavor notes, a little easier to grow than Criollo, not as one-dimensional as Forastero. So a ton of high-quality boutique or bean-to-bar chocolate is also using Trinitario. You can still get Forastero beans that are used in high-quality chocolate, but this is just to tell you that commercial chocolate, like maybe this one, would definitely use Forastero, and you wouldn't find a higher quality bean like a Criollo or a Trinitario in a commercial or industrially produced chocolate. Like wine, I know I've touched on this, chocolate can demonstrate different flavor notes, and this is what is known as terroir, and literally translated, terroir just means dirt. It's a French word. It's used a lot in wine. It's even used in coffee because there are a lot of similarities between chocolate and coffee and wine. So with terroir, what you're picking up on are flavors that are very specific to where the chocolate is grown. And that's why with a single origin or a blend from a very specific region, you're going to be able to pick up on specific flavor notes. But with a blended chocolate from you don't know where it comes from, you're not going to get these same flavor notes. You'll still get cocoa, you'll still get chocolate, it'll still taste great, but you're not going to get all of the different potential flavors you can get with chocolate. Chocolate actually is pretty acidic most of the time. It can be very bitter. It can have notes of spice. It can have notes of roasted fruit or roasted nuts. It can taste like toast. It could be citrus, tropical. It could be dried and cooked fruit. It can just taste sweet, like this one. It's quite sweet, but you can have different types of sweetness. You can have dark caramel, you can have molasses, you can have burnt sugar, you can have different qualities of sweetness. Malt syrup, for example. Then we have field or forest. Does it taste floral? Can you detect floral notes like you could in perhaps a wine? Can you pick up on hay or dried leaves? This is getting a little bit developed and a little bit complex, but these are just some of the things that I think about whenever I'm tasting chocolate. So the first thing we do is we snap it, sniff it, and then we savor it. And as we're savoring, that's when we're going to detect all of these different flavors. And so the best way to do it and to rate your chocolate is to write this all down. So what can I detect with this one? Well, I got a lot of red fruit and I got a lot of citrus from this chocolate. With this one, I got cocoa and I got sweetness, not much more. So these are two very distinct differences. The other thing is bitterness, acidity, so and how it feels in your mouth. So we have flavor notes, we have mouthfeel. Is it creamy? Is it grainy? And then we have your palate picking up on things like bitterness, sweetness, and acidity. And just like wine, these are how we can evaluate our chocolate. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my 66% and my 64. I hope by now you have an idea of what to look for. So I'm going to smell, snap, or snap and smell, or sniff. This smells great. I love this chocolate because it's really mellow, soft and mellow, whereas this one is really, it kind of punches you in your mouth. This one is really great just for relaxing. It's a relaxing chocolate. Chew it a couple of times, let it melt on your tongue. It's okay if you feel silly. I feel really silly. This is how you do it. Okay, so this one has a lot less acidity than this one that I tasted. It still has some, chocolate should have some, but I get a lot of toasted notes, you know, the fruit, not so much, whereas this one was all citrus, red fruit. This is more toasted, cocoa, nuts, praline, this kind of thing. It's good. This one, because it is not intense, it's more mellow. I actually use this a lot in my baking because it allows other flavors to shine through. All right, last one, Manjari. 64%, this is single origin Madagascar. So again, the single origin is a very good indicator of quality, and it tells me that because the beans come up from a very specific source, I'm going to be able to pick up on the terroir, and I'm going to pick up on lots of different other flavors besides just cocoa or chocolate. All right, Manjari, super intense. I'm getting a lot of citrus and red fruit again, but kind of in a different way. This one is almost spicy, and I get some tropical fruit. Madagascar makes sense. I'm getting a little bit of banana, raisin also. Whereas this one, the character of this was completely different. In terms of cocoa percentage, this is lower. This is 64% and this is 66%, but this is way more intense. So that tells me that whatever's going on in Madagascar is helping these beans become really, really bursting with flavor once they're roasted. So to recap, if you want to do a chocolate tasting, you don't need a ton of samples, but what you want to look for is a high quality bar so that you can get the most from your tasting. So a higher cocoa percentage, hopefully single origin, or you know where it comes from. and really think about what it's doing in your mouth. Smell it, evaluate it, look at it, break it. So you do the snap and the sniff test, and then savor it. Allow it to melt in your mouth. Chew it a couple of times. Let the chocolate coat your palate, and see what your palate is telling you. Is it acidic? If it's acidic, you're going to feel it here. If it's bitter, you'll feel it at the front of your mouth. Sorry, at the back of your mouth. And if it's sweet, you'll feel it at the front of your mouth. What are the aromas? Do you pick up on fruit, which is a very likely scenario with chocolate, especially if it's a Trinitaria or a Criolla bean? Are you getting red fruit or dried fruit, tropical or citrus? Does it taste like nuts? Can you get toasted flavors? Are you picking up on caramel? Or is it just chocolate, in which case that's okay too. And you're likely eating chocolate made from Forastero beans, because these are the beans that are the punchiest when it comes to that pure cocoa flavor. And again, this is the most widely used bean, so it is the most likely one that you will find. When you're buying chocolate in the shop, really read the label and see if you can determine where it comes from. If you can, you know it's going to tell you a lot in your mouth. If you don't know where the beans come from, chances are you're not going to. So that wraps this session up. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you for joining me. I'm Chef Liz Stevenson, and join me for the next session when I take you into the kitchen to work with chocolate. Thank you.